She transformed modern mathematics, changed Einstein's law of gravity, and revolutionized the field of physics. Her work became the foundation for everything from quantum mechanics to modern field theory, and yet she's been mostly unheard of outside academic circles. She was Jewish, a woman, and a genius, in a world that tried to silence all three. This is the story of Emmy Noether, the brilliant mathematician who defied prejudice, escaped Nazi Germany, and reshaped the laws of the universe. Even Albert Einstein, reflecting on her legacy after her death, called her the most significant creative mathematical genius thus far produced since the higher education of women began. Her legacy lives in every symmetry and every equation that governs the world around us, and in today's sleep story I would like to shine a light on the incredible Emmy Noether. Welcome to another blue and white ASMR video. Let's get started. Emmy Noether was born in Erlangen, Bavaria on March 23, 1882, into a respected German Jewish family. Her father, Max Noether, was a mathematician of significant repute who specialized in algebraic geometry. Despite suffering from a serious childhood illness, he overcame adversity to become a professor, influencing Emmy's early intellectual environment. Her mother, Ida Kaufmann, came from a wealthy Jewish merchant family. The Noethers belonged to an assimilated Jewish community that was generally well integrated into German society. However, subtle and not so subtle social limitations shaped Emmy's world, especially for women and Jews in early 20th century Germany, where anti-Semitic attitudes and gender discrimination were still widespread despite formal emancipation. Emmy Noether was known not only for her brilliant mind, but also for her warm, approachable nature and dedication as a teacher. Despite the barriers she faced, she cultivated close relationships with her students, many of whom admired her patience, encouragement, and willingness to challenge them to think deeply and creatively. Colleagues often described her as modest and unassuming, yet fiercely passionate about mathematics. She preferred collaborative discussions over formal lectures, fostering an environment where questions and ideas flowed freely. One student recalled how Emmy would sometimes erase entire boards of complex equations to start fresh, teaching that understanding the principles mattered more than rote calculations. Contemporary reactions to her work varied. While some in the academic community were slow to recognize the full impact of her discoveries, those who worked with her understood they were witnessing a revolutionary thinker. Her intellectual generosity and personal kindness left a lasting impression on everyone around her, making her not only a pioneer in mathematics, but also a beloved mentor. At that time, German universities were largely male domains. Women were often excluded from formal higher education, and Jewish students and academics faced prejudice and restricted opportunities. Yet, Emmy's sharp mind was evident from an early age. She initially trained in languages, with plans to teach French and English, a respectable profession for women at the time. However, her passion soon shifted to mathematics, a field overwhelmingly dominated by men and generally considered unsuitable for women. In 1900, Emmy began attending university classes at the University of Erlangen. However, Because women were not yet officially admitted, she was only allowed to audit courses, meaning she could sit in on lectures but was not formally enrolled or granted credit. It was not until 1904 that the University of Erlangen officially opened its doors to women, and Emmy became one of the first female students to enroll. This change reflected a slow but growing acceptance of women in higher education, though societal attitudes remained conservative. In 1907, she earned her doctoral degree with a dissertation on invariant theory under the supervision of Paul Gordon, a mathematician known as the King of Invariant Theory. Her thesis was titled On the Theory of Invariance of Linear Transformations, marking the beginning of a lifelong engagement with abstract mathematical structures. Despite this academic success, the deeply entrenched gender biases of the time meant Emmy struggled to find paid academic work, a reflection of the broader challenges faced by women in science. Seeking to further her studies, Emmy moved to the University of Göttingen in 1908, a world-renowned centre of mathematical research. There, she attended lectures by some of the most influential mathematicians of the time, including Felix Klein and David Hilbert. These experiences helped shape her mathematical thinking and introduced her to leading figures who would later become crucial mentors and collaborators. Even with a doctorate in hand, Emmy Noether faced a world that was not ready for a Jewish woman mathematician. In early 20th century Germany, academic positions for women, especially Jewish women, were nearly impossible to obtain. Universities generally did not grant women faculty roles or paid appointments, reflecting the deeply entrenched sexism and social conventions of the time. It was an era when a woman's place was expected to be in the home, not the lecture hall, and Jewish scholars faced additional layers of prejudice and exclusion. In the early 20th century, Germany was a country of great intellectual achievement, but also deep social conservatism. Universities were dominated by men, many of whom held traditional views that women were unsuited for advanced study or academic careers. For Jewish academics, the situation was even more complex. While Jewish scholars had made remarkable contributions to science and philosophy, they often faced unspoken prejudices and legal restrictions that limited their opportunities. Antisemitism, though sometimes subtle, was embedded in the fabric of society and became increasingly overt after World War I, culminating in the rise of the Nazi Party. In this environment, women like Emmy Noether were navigating not only gender bias, but also cultural and religious discrimination, making her academic achievements all the more extraordinary. Undeterred by these barriers, Emmy made her way to the University of Göttingen, then the leading centre of mathematical research in the world. Göttingen was home to some of the era's most renowned mathematicians. Their presence made Göttingen a hub for pioneering mathematical thought and innovation. At Göttingen, Emmy began collaborating with these giants, contributing significant advances to abstract algebra and invariant theory. Yet, despite her growing reputation for brilliance, she was not permitted to hold a formal teaching position. University regulations barred women from independent lecturing, so for many years her lectures were officially given under David Hilbert's name. This practice, while unjust, allowed her ideas to reach students and colleagues despite the discriminatory rules. This was not simply a matter of sexism. It was the reflection of an academic culture shaped by Christian male dominance, where women, and especially Jewish women, were doubly marginalized. Emmy's identity placed her outside the accepted norm, and her legitimacy in academia was continually challenged. Yet she persevered, quietly shaping the minds of students and building a devoted following. Her groundbreaking ideas in algebra and theoretical physics began to gain recognition, even if official titles and pay remained out of reach. When the University Senate resisted formally appointing her, David Hilbert famously defended her by saying, "Gentlemen, the Senate is not a bathhouse." This sharp and memorable rebuke highlighted the absurdity of excluding someone based on gender, asserting that scholarship should be judged on merit alone. Over time, Emmy's contributions to modern algebra, particularly her work on the abstract structures known as ideals, rings, and modules, became foundational. While she lacked formal status and recognition for many years, her intellectual influence was undeniable. Students and colleagues sought her mentorship, knowing they were learning from one of the sharpest mathematical minds of the age. During World War I, Emmy Noether made a discovery that fundamentally changed how we understand the universe. She uncovered a profound connection. Whenever something in nature remains constant, such as energy, momentum, or electric charge, that constancy is linked to a deeper symmetry in the laws of physics. This principle, known today as Noether's Theorem, reveals that every symmetry corresponds to a conserved quantity. Noether's theorem provides the mathematical backbone explaining why certain physical properties never change, no matter what transformations or events occur. It is the underlying principle that unites diverse natural laws, from the way planets orbit the Sun to the behavior of subatomic particles. In fact, this theorem is central to the development of modern physics, including Einstein's general theory of relativity and quantum mechanics. Noether's insights allowed scientists to understand and predict phenomena with greater precision. For example, technologies we rely on today, such as GPS navigation systems, depend on calculations rooted in Einstein's theory of gravity, which itself is mathematically grounded in the principles Noether helped establish. Medical imaging techniques like PET scans, which enable early detection of diseases, are also based on physics that follow these conservation laws. Even renewable energy technologies and aerospace engineering benefit from her discoveries as they rely on understanding forces and symmetries in nature. Albert Einstein himself acknowledged the importance of Noether's work, stating that her theorem was essential to his own theories of gravity. Noether's theorem provided the rigorous mathematical foundation that connected physical symmetries to conservation laws, bridging abstract mathematics and practical physics in a way no one had done before. Beyond physics, Emmy Noether quietly revolutionized pure mathematics. She was a pioneer in abstract algebra, developing fundamental concepts in ring theory, modules, and ideals. These ideas were not merely theoretical, they laid the groundwork for many modern applications, including cryptography, the science of securing information. Thanks to the algebraic structures Noether developed, the encryption methods that keep our online banking, emails and private messages safe from hackers are possible. Without her foundational work, the secure digital world we depend on today would be far less reliable. In short, Emmy Noether's discoveries do not just live in textbooks, they shape the invisible rules governing the universe and the technologies that power our everyday lives. Mathematician Pavel Alexandrov praised her as the greatest woman mathematician who has ever lived and the greatest woman scientist of any sort in our century. French mathematician Jean Dieudonné stated simply, "Without Emmy Noether, modern algebra would not exist as we know it." By the early 1930s, Emmy Noether had finally achieved a level of institutional respect. In 1922, she was granted the right to teach as a Privatdozent, a private lecturer, a title that allowed her to give university lectures independently, an important milestone given the persistent barriers for women in academia. Her reputation grew steadily, and in 1932 she was invited to speak at the International Congress of Mathematicians in Zurich, a rare and prestigious honor, especially for a woman and a Jewish scholar in that era. This prestigious invitation reflected the high regard the global mathematical community had for her original and foundational research, marking her as one of the leading mathematicians of her generation. But that same year, Germany was slipping into darkness. The rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party brought with it a ruthless campaign against Jews and anyone deemed undesirable according to their racist ideology. Universities, traditionally centers of free thought and inquiry, became early targets of this political purge. When Hitler came to power in 1933, Jewish professors, including Emmy, were among the first to be dismissed from their posts, regardless of their accomplishments or contributions. Emmy's career in Germany was abruptly ended, not because of her work, but because of her Jewish heritage and the growing anti-Semitic policies of the regime, which sought to erase Jewish influence from all facets of German public life. That same year, the Nazis passed the law for the restoration of the professional civil service, which legally forced the removal of all non-Aryan public employees, including hundreds of Jewish academics. Entire university departments were gutted overnight, devastating decades of scholarship and collaboration. At the University of Göttingen, once a world-leading center for mathematics and physics, over a quarter of the faculty were purged. Among those dismissed were physicist Max Born, a pioneer of quantum mechanics, who had trained many of the field's most important figures, mathematician Richard Courant, founder of the renowned Courant Institute, and James Franck, a Nobel-winning physicist who resigned in protest even before his official removal. The loss of such luminaries deeply wounded German science and culture. These dismissals were not only bureaucratic, but were deliberately public and humiliating, aimed at intimidating Jewish academics and encouraging their complete social and professional isolation. Students were often encouraged or coerced into denouncing their Jewish professors. Libraries were purged of books by Jewish authors, lecture halls renamed or shut down, and academic publications censored. Many Jewish academics were banned from publishing or collaborating internationally, severing their ties to the global scientific community. Facing persecution, many fled Germany to rebuild their careers abroad, seeking refuge in countries such as the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union. Others were imprisoned or subjected to brutal conditions. Tragically, many would later perish during the Holocaust, which decimated Europe's Jewish population and destroyed countless intellectual lives. The effect on German science was catastrophic, halting progress and scattering the nation's brightest minds across the world. For Emmy and others like her, exile was not just a personal tragedy, but the violent dismantling of the scholarly world they had helped build. Forced to flee, Emmy emigrated to the United States and accepted a position at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, a women's liberal arts college known for its progressive values and dedication to women's education. This was a stark contrast to the prestigious but male-dominated and increasingly hostile environment she had left behind. At Bryn Mawr, Emmy found a smaller, more supportive academic community where she taught and mentored young women, encouraging a new generation of female mathematicians, many of whom would go on to make their own important contributions to the field. In addition to her teaching, she gave lectures at the newly founded Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, home to some of the greatest minds of the time, including Albert Einstein and John von Neumann. However, she was never made a full faculty member, partly due to the lingering gender biases in American academia, and also because of her status as a recent immigrant with limited institutional ties. Despite these barriers, her influence and collaboration within the intellectual community were significant, as she continued to contribute to cutting-edge mathematical research. In her personal letters, Emmy expressed deep sadness and frustration over the destruction of the German academic world she had helped build. She mourned the loss of colleagues, many of whom were silenced, arrested, or forced into exile, and tragically, those who perished in the Holocaust. Emmy Noether never returned to Germany, a poignant symbol of a severed connection to her homeland and the intellectual environment that had shaped her early career. In 1935, after complications following surgery for a uterine cyst, she died suddenly at the age of 53. Her death was a profound loss to the mathematical and scientific communities worldwide, cutting a short but brilliant career during a time of great upheaval and uncertainty. Though her life was brief, her legacy continues to inspire mathematicians and scientists around the world. News of her death reached Albert Einstein in Princeton, where he penned a tribute in the New York Times. He called her, in the judgment of the most competent living mathematicians, Fräulein Noether was the most significant creative mathematical genius thus far produced since the higher education of women began. This was a rare public acknowledgement of her towering influence, an influence that had taken root quietly and often invisibly through papers passed between hands, students who had studied under her, and theories that now carried her name. Einstein's tribute underscored what the mathematical world had long known, but the public had yet to recognize. Emmy Noether had changed the way modern science was built. Though she lived at the intersection of multiple barriers, woman, Jew, refugee, Emmy Noether redefined what it meant to do mathematics. Her name is now associated with some of the most fundamental structures in algebra: Noetherian rings, Noetherian spaces, and of course, Noether's Theorem. These are not obscure academic terms. They are essential tools used by scientists and engineers to model everything from quantum fields to digital encryption. In later decades, her contributions would be more widely recognized. The Noether Lecture was established in her honor by the Association for Women in Mathematics in 1980, celebrating women who have made fundamental and sustained contributions to the mathematical sciences. This annual lecture has become a prestigious platform, inspiring generations of female mathematicians worldwide. Additionally, various streets, schools, university buildings, and scientific institutes around the world now bear her name, from Germany to Israel to the United States, reflecting the global impact of her work. At Bryn Mawr College, where she spent her final years, a commemorative plaque honors her lasting impact, and her ashes rest quietly in the college's library cloisters, a peaceful testament to her enduring presence in the academic community she helped nurture. In Göttingen, Germany, a plaque marks the place where she transformed mathematics forever. Her name lives on through prestigious awards by organizations supporting women in science. These events not only celebrate her revolutionary ideas, but also serve as a beacon for aspiring researchers, encouraging them to break barriers and pursue excellence. Leading institutions like the Institute for Advanced Study recognize her as a pioneer who broke barriers in abstract algebra and physics. Even scientific publications continue to celebrate her revolutionary ideas a century after her key discoveries, highlighting their foundational role in modern science and mathematics. In Israel, her legacy is honored in quiet but meaningful ways. Streets bearing her name, such as Rehov Emmy Noether in Haifa and Beersheba, stand as everyday tributes to her contributions to science and to Jewish intellectual history. In addition, some Jewish museums and academic institutions worldwide include her story as an inspiration to generations of Jewish scientists and mathematicians, emphasizing the perseverance and brilliance she embodied. For Jewish women in science, her story became not only one of perseverance, but of quiet, unshakable brilliance. A reminder that even when the world excludes you, your ideas can change it. Emmy Noether's life and work continues to inspire, symbolizing the profound impact that courage, intellect, and resilience can have on the world. Emmy Noether was not only a groundbreaking researcher, but also an inspiring mentor who influenced a generation of mathematicians. Among her students were notable figures such as Bartel Leendert van der Waarden, who helped formalize and popularize her work in abstract algebra, and Saunders MacLean, co-founder of category theory. Through her teaching and mentorship, Emmy's ideas spread worldwide, shaping the future of mathematics and physics. Today, her theories underpin essential technologies across various industries. They inform the algorithms that protect online communication, guide the engineering principles behind aerospace design, and support advancements in quantum computing. Her intellectual legacy lives on not only in academic papers, but in the devices and systems that power our modern world. Thank you for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.